I actually want to do three things today. I want to pay homage, I want to make an admission, and I want to tell a few stories. Homage. I just want to thank Saul, the incomparable Melissa, and Matt L.T. Guilford for the opportunity to be here today and for putting on an extraordinary conference so far. I'm really honored to be here, and just, I'll even say we should give you thanks for yesterday as well. There is, however, a higher God. That would be the gods of baseball to who I prayed last night.
White Sox.
I was watching the game last night, and I said, God, baseball gods, if you let me win, if you let the Astros finally win, I promise that I will wear this hat when I give my presentation tomorrow. It's not hard to get me to wear the hat. As you can see, it's a little beat up and certainly got thrown down a little bit over the last couple of days. But they came through, and so if any of you heard my yelp last night around 11:30 in the hotel, I apologize. I was not in pain. It was actually a yelp of happiness. I'm sure you Red Sox fans can appreciate that kind of excitement and emotion. So that's my homage. I do want to make an admission. And the admission is that I'm a second-string storyteller. As it turns out, just like the first time that I got to play on my Little League baseball team, I am here today due to injury. My boss, Deborah Wentz-Smith, the president of the Council on Competitiveness, very much wanted to be here, but she broke her leg a couple of weeks ago and has been a little bit infirm and unable to travel as much as she normally would. So I come here to represent her today, and I'm hopeful that, like my idol Roger Clemens, I will come out of the bullpen to lead us home to a successful victory here on the podium.
Thanks to the Red Sox.
I will give credit to the Red Sox. Well, except he is from Katy, Texas, but we won't go there. Okay, so a few stories. I'm an economic development guy. That's sort of what I've done. I've had the opportunity to work in communities across the continent. And I want to do a little geographic hopscotch today to talk to you a little bit about globalization and innovation and what are some of the things that I think and we think make sense in terms of building regional economies. The place I want to start is an opportunity I had a couple months ago, to tour a GE medical device plant. This was a plant at which they make X-ray machines and MRIs. And so a couple of colleagues and I had a chance to meet the plant manager and get this extraordinary tour. And by the way, this is the best part of being a consultant, like seeing stuff actually made, particularly for people who, can't make anything. This is the cool stuff. So I'm really pumped, right? And the plant manager is also really excited. He loves his plant. And so we're walking around and we're seeing, all of the efforts they have gone through to do total quality management and Six Sigma quality. Where you have, if you've ever seen this, where you literally have places taped on the floor where the manufacturing takes place, the parts are all color-coded. There are a whole variety of steps that you can take to ensure that no errors take place and to improve the productivity of the plant. So we're walking around, and I'm getting to see how MRI machines are made, and he's like, well, we went through this whole process, and we've been able to increase productivity by 20%, and we were able to reduce our workforce, which I'm thinking as an economic development guy isn't really my goal, but as part of this process, he's really excited about it. So much so that they had a part of the plant that wasn't actually being used, and they had turned off the lights over that part of the plant because every single bit of energy counted. And he's like, we actually are continuing to get more and more opportunities from GE to build things here for the time being. But if you looked at him, you could hear the fear in his voice and see it in his eyes. And he wasn't afraid of Philips or Siemens. He was afraid of the fact that GE has a plant in China, and that plant was growing a lot faster than his, where they were already starting to make the highest, most technologically advanced medical devices. Now here's the kicker to the story. Guess where this plant was? Dennis, can you help me figure out the right way to get people involved? Cleveland, says Brett. Any other guesses? Milwaukee. Someone actually knows where their main plant is. It wasn't Milwaukee.
Mexico.
Monterrey, Mexico. Monterrey, Mexico. Those guys are scared, and they should be. And we all need to be. If the folks in Monterrey are scared, and they're already losing business to China, this globalization thing is really something that we all need to think about. So let me jump down a little bit to Lima, Peru. This was kind of my first major consulting assignment in economic development. I was, not just wet behind the ears, I was soaking behind the ears. 25-year-old who they somehow had the misfortune of throwing down there to try to be the local project director for this national competitiveness study. And my boss and I went to meet the ministers at the Ministry of Agriculture. So we had like 5 or 6 ministers, and our goal that day was to teach them about competitiveness and what it meant to be a competitive country. So, we wait for a while. We actually call it Naugahyde time because all of the sofas in the ministries in Peru and Bolivia were this fake leather. And they have all this great leather, but they couldn't actually afford it themselves. So we're sitting on Naugahyde sofas doing Naugahyde time. We finally get brought in. My boss gives me the chance to give this impassioned speech about competitiveness, meaning learning your customers and trying to find better networks and trying to understand how you can add value to your product so you're not stuck just selling commodities. And, we had said at the beginning, competitiveness in Peru used to be about having lunch with the minister, because that's what used to matter. It used to simply matter who you knew. And if you knew the minister, then the minister would give you a deal and you would be able to export your product. So anyway, give this great speech. I think I'm doing a good job. And I speak Spanish, and I'm not making that many errors. And so at the end, we're like, okay, what is competitiveness about? And the Minister of Agriculture says, it's having breakfast with the minister. But we were ready. In our Naugahyde time, they had put pictures of all of the ministers of agriculture for the past 40 years or something in Peru. So since we had such a long time, we decided that we would try to determine the average stay of a minister of agriculture in Peru over the past 40 years. So here's the second chance for audience participation. Any guesses of how long your typical minister of agriculture stays in Peru? 2 years. 2 years? 3 years? 3? It's got 3. Any other guesses? Close. 1, 6. 9.7 months. So the moral of that story is, if you think you're in because you know someone, you got to know everybody in Peru, which I guess might be possible. But don't think that government broadly is going to be able to create any sort of sustainable advantage. They can create the conditions. It's really important to have government policy which supports innovation. But at the end of the day, the private sector has to run this thing. So now let me hopscotch up back to my home state of Texas, to a lovely little town called Buffalo Gap. I am confident that most people in this room have heard of Peru but have not heard of Buffalo Gap. Anyone been to Buffalo Gap? Oh my God. Mike, get out. You probably went where I was, which was the Perini Ranch Steakhouse in Buffalo Gap. Buffalo Gap is 15 miles south of Abilene, has anyone heard of Abilene? All right. Well, Abilene, by the way, this is a story of bravery in economic development. That's the way I'm going to pitch it to you guys. Abilene is a small city in kind of West Texas. It is known primarily for the fact that it is home to 3 faith-based universities. There is McMurray, there is Hardin-Simmons, and there is Abilene Christian. You've got the Methodists, the Baptists, and the Church of Christ all having major universities in this region. It's also a land of many guns. They do like to hunt. So I'm going to Buffalo Gap. Luckily, I'm Texan, and I can talk with the Texan accent, and I told Melissa I was almost going to do my entire presentation this way, but I'll try not to, just to make her smile. So I'm down there, and I got to tell them all about how important tolerance is for economic development. And literally, we're speaking. Didn't just eat at the steak ranch. That's where, or the steakhouse. That's where the event was. It was outdoors at the Perini Ranch Steakhouse. And I'm just trying to figure out, am I going to tell them about Richard Florida's finding that the highest correlation between growth and high-tech jobs and highest correlated variable with growth and high-tech jobs is the number of gays in your community. I know you've probably heard that stat And I said, what the hell? So I did it, and there were a few guffaws. I did duck a little bit. But at the end, 2 or 3 people came up to me and said, thank God you said that. And I was like, wow, I can't believe it. Thank God I said that. And I was just struck because I, even as a Texan, thought, oh, these guys aren't going to get it. But they did. And I shouldn't have been surprised because this group, in addition to understanding that it's important to be tolerant and to recognize, actually, let me do this as fun. Do I have a few more minutes?
About 2 or 3.
Okay. Here's the way I like to tell that story, or the way I do this when I give speeches. I know it's early, but everyone close your eyes. Think about the most creative, innovative person you know. Get a picture of that person in your mind. Is that person normal? Almost never. To be innovative, by your very nature, you got to do something different, right? You want to be a place that will allow differences to exist and not be persecuted for whatever reason. So they responded to that. They responded also to the fact, and I already had, that this was the Texas Midwest Community Network that had invited me to speak. This is a network of a region that extends for like 200 square miles. I mean, this is Texas-sized. It's 20 different counties in the middle of nowhere. They had recognized that they could not compete globally anymore if the only kind of interaction they were having with their town next door was the Friday night football game. You can have your Friday night football games, and they're great in West Texas. But they needed to work together as a region, and they had to overcome their preconceived notions and their old rivalries to compete. And I'll finish then with a place down the road where I spent 8 years, Austin, Texas. And many of the folks in Buffalo Gap looked at Austin like it was the land of Satan. And indeed, Austin's a pretty interesting place. Austin is known for its music and for its weird festivals. Austin City Limits, big South by Southwest music festival. But the real Austin is this place where every year for mayor, we have both a transvestite and a crossdresser who run, not the same guy. And they both get 5% of the vote. It is a place where we have a festival called Spamorama, which is an homage to everyone's favorite luncheon meat, Spam, where there are Spam tossing contests, Spam eating contests, Spam cooking contests. My great friend Chris Bjornson once won the Spam eating contest, where you actually have to consume an entire tin of Spam, 2 pieces of bread, and then keep it down for 2 minutes. And he won because a dog that entered couldn't keep it down. There's another great festival called Eeyore's Birthday. You guys familiar with Winnie the Pooh? Eeyore never had a birthday. So some enterprising English PhDs in Austin decided they would create the Eeyore's Birthday Party. It is a fascinating thing where you sort of have to wear tie-dye and where Austin makes pot legal for a day because every breath you take is infused with various chemical substances. The point I want to make about Austin is a point actually that Carol made yesterday, and I just want to drive home. The key to this is not that you need to go through sexual reorientation training. It's not that you have to have weird festivals or be known for music. But you've got to have something about your community which is distinctive. You cannot be like every place else. So don't copy Austin, but think really smartly about what assets you have and how you can create the networks and culture that will make Providence or will make wherever you're from feel like it's a different place. And if you can do that, you're going to be well on your way to having successful regional innovation. Thanks.
Thank you.